All right, so for this week's project, we're going to be repairing this Akai GX625. In particular, we're going to be replacing the playback head. And this unit belongs to one of my home customers who brought this to me a little over a month ago. And at that time, he complained that there was no record audio whatsoever. It would record over all of the previous audio, but it would not lay down tracks from anything that he was trying to record onto the tape. And so what I found was an excessive amount of buildup, oxidation on the heads. Got all of that cleaned off, only to find out that yes, it would record both channels once all of that was taken care of, but only one channel of the playback had any definition to it. The other channel was just a little dull without any high frequency, and there wasn't any kind of an alignment issue creating this problem. So what I did at that time was I flipped the wiring around on the heads so I could eliminate the preamp in the unit being the issue and put it right back on the playback head. And that's what I determined that the problem was. And so I kind of left that up to the customer to locate his own parts, and he did come up with one, and we have a playback head for this model. So we're going to change that out. We're going to do some record testing with it, some playback testing obviously, and see if we can get this back up and going for him. The other issue that it has is that the supply reel hub needs to be adjusted outwards a little bit because the reel has a tendency to scrape on the front of the unit. Someone was using a large reel, and you can see the line where the reel scraped on it. At first I thought maybe the reel may have been warped, but as it turns out, even my reel and his plastic reel still scrapes there. So we're gonna have to try to get that reel outwards a little bit. There should be some adjustment for that. So we got a little bit of work to do to this, and we'll get started as soon as we play a little bit of our intro music this week. And I've chosen Pat Travers' album Crash and Burn, and of course one of his most, if not most, famous song. This is Snortin' Whiskey. Let's hear a little bit of this and we'll get started on the Akai.
Snortin' whiskey, drinking cocaine. Been snorting whiskey and now I'm drinking cocaine. Got this feeling, I'm gonna drive that girl insane. Got this feeling, I'm gonna drive that girl insane.
All right, let's pick back up and we'll have a quick look at this. Starting off front and center, they're going to put the pitch control right there for you. Obviously it's detented in the center for ideal speed, or you can tweak it to the right for fast, tweak it to the left for slower. Coming over on the left-hand side, they're going to give you the timer control knob here. And of course, if you had that external module, which Akai made one, Technics made one, Sansui made one, so many of those manufacturers made that unit. Basically, you plug this unit into the back of it. It has a digital clock on it, and of course, once the preset time that you've put in, once the basically alarm goes off, instead of an alarm, it just triggers that AC outlet, and if you have it on record, it will kick this guy into the record mode as soon as the power is restored to it. Power button, real size, 7 and 10 inch. Of course, 1/4 inch headphone jack with an output level control. They're going to give you the monitor switch. Track selector for 1 or 2. Tape selector, giving you a wide range or low noise. Tape speed, of course, it's just the 2 speeds on this one. Record mute, and then a little larger controls for input level for mic and line. Of course, 2 1/4 inch mic jacks, very common for the day. And then all your tape transport controls lined up very nicely right across here. The pressure roller of this is in really nice shape. It is dirty, but the rubber is in fantastic condition and would clean up very nice. One thing I like about this one, it does have the digital tape counter on it. It's really, really nice, kind of set right here in the, Akai branded portion of the, where the heads are located. And so lights up real nice. And here's where it gets a little muddy for me, is this whole reel scraping thing. I was pretty convinced that this happened by a warped reel, and I'm still not convinced it didn't happen that way, and here's why. So basically, the way that the customer has this now, and we'll take the reel off, is he's using 2 of these reel adjustment sheets from a Pioneer reel-to-reel tape deck. But if you don't use that, what will happen is the reel will scrape right here on this screw holder. And kind of simulate that for you now. And it does, it will rub right against that. Of course, if you put that sheet there, it won't do it. And so I still don't see how that would make that scrape against that right there, a 10-inch reel scrape against that. But yeah, it moves nice and freely and doesn't create any kind of scraping with that reel sheet there. And both of these reels, whether it be the take-up or the supply side, both of them are at the same depth. So I'm still not sure that this is not something that there was a defective reel that caused that. But we'll definitely look in the manual and see if there's a way to build this out or adjust it out a little bit. But I would think that you'd have to put a 10-inch reel adapter on this, which would bring it out probably just a little bit more anyway. And so I'm finding it hard to believe that that would have caused that. But we'll find out a little more about that as we get into it. So I think the first thing we're going to do is we'll go ahead and get this all apart and get down to where the head is. And of course, like I said, he purchased his own part and turned it over pretty quickly, actually, way faster than I thought someone could get a head for this. So he must have just found one that somebody was parting out. But there it is, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to access the side screw holes just like this one is, and not have to do little to no alignment of the actual holder that head fits on, the bracket that head fits onto. So let me go ahead and get this apart, and we'll get down into that, and we'll find out what we can do as far as getting the heads exchanged out. And then from that point, we'll put a reel of tape on it, and we'll see if it improves over what I heard once I got the heads all cleaned up. And this was never supposed to be a video. I was actually going to just clean this up and, send it on its way. And then that's when I discovered the problem with the playback not being that good. And discovered that by flipping the wires around on the head, that it wasn't a preamp issue. It was definitely a head issue. And I looked that head over probably a dozen times and cleaned it 24 times, still to no avail. So, all right, let me go ahead and we'll get this apart and we'll pick back up and get the head installed. So give me a second for that and we'll come back. All right, let's pick back up and we'll go ahead and start disassembling this to the point to where we can get down to where the heads are and we can access them. If I remember right. I didn't tighten anything up too tight, knowing that I was going to be taking it all back apart again. So. And let's see. That one's probably Phillips. Those out of the way, and then this will lift and give us really good access to the playback head right here. I'm going to go ahead and remove the pressure roller just in case we're going to be having a soldering iron in here, and so the last thing I'd want to do is brush up against a soldering iron or brush the soldering iron up against this pressure roller and basically ruin it. So Let's just remove it, and then we don't have to worry about it. So this is it, and this is the screws along the side. I'm just wondering, am I going to be able to access those? It looks like maybe. Of course, I don't want to damage the capstan at the same time that I'm trying to get these screws out, but they do seem to be coming out pretty easy. Of course, hopefully the head that he purchased is in just as good a shape as, or in better shape than this one is. And there it is, right there. Not much to it. And in my efforts to troubleshoot this, all I did was just exchange the top for the bottom and the bottom for the top. But now that I got this out and I'm looking at it, I do not see anything here. It looks perfect. And I had cleaned it numerous times, but you just can't imagine all of the buildup that was all over these heads. I mean, just the most oxide I had ever seen on any tape heads. How it even played a tape was beyond me. But there was so much all over the record head, there was no possible way it was ever going to put a signal onto tape. So, all right, let's go ahead and we'll get the new head up here and make sure that they look exactly the same. And that is a pretty looking head. I'll say that. There is no question that one looks way better than the other one does, so I'm going to assume that we're going to be okay. And this one also came with, the two screws. First of all, it came with the two screws and the shielding. So maybe we'll just go ahead and use all of the new pieces. And so what we want to do here is just to make sure that there's no confusion, we're going to put a little mark over on this side, which will let us know that these are going to be our signal lines and these are going to be our ground lines. And then on our ground side, we're going to put an R right here if I can get one on there. And that way we can unsolder everything. I guess worst case scenario, we have the video to fall back on. Let's get the iron turned on. And the last thing you want to do is apply too much heat to this new head. We're not going to put very much on it, just enough to get the wires to adhere, and that will be that. And I'm going to use a little of this foam right here. I'm going to kind of press this head down into this foam. I'm going to cut out a little bit of a channel there. That way we're not pushing the head against the metal of this unit while we're trying to solder on it. This will give us a little bit of a resting place while we solder up our wires. Trick is not to cut all the way through this. Just cut enough away to where you can get the head in there and hold it fairly secure. And that should be it right there. I don't know if the wires are going to allow us to get that far. Probably not, so we're going to be holding on to this thing. You know what? I got a better idea. All I want to do is just protect it, just to make sure that there's not going to be any kind of issue. So we're going to make sure it's secured with something. I don't know, those wires. How about that? There we go. Yeah, that will definitely work. That will definitely work. And I'm going to add just a little bit of new solder to this. And we'll just start off with the ground connection from the old head. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, looks like that went pretty smoothly. Ooh, that is a little warm though. And we will use the shield provided by the part seller. We'll see how much luck I have trying to get that first screw in there. I'm going to use a little smaller screwdriver than I started off with. I'm just kind of feeling for that hole. I can't really see it. Let me see. Okay, got it. Now before we even think about tightening that down, let's go ahead and get the bottom one. one feels good. Now we're going to move up to the little bigger screwdriver for trying to get a good bite on these, and we're going to tighten them down just a little bit. We're not going to go crazy. Once I've confirmed everything will work, then from that point, we'll put a little fingernail polish there to Loctite them to the frame. There we go. Probably not a bad idea to clean it. Now that we've been messing around, I've had my fingerprints all over it. And we'll tuck our wires back. I think they were just a little bit further in here. That may be about where they were at. I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah. There we go. We'll call that good. All right, so the next step, let's go ahead, and we don't need to put any of that trim stuff back on because we may need to do some adjustment through here. We'll see what it sounds like and see if we made a big improvement over the old head. If I would have been thinking, I would have played a tape on it for you so you could hear the difference. But just think about one side having perfect dynamic range and the other side being very muffled, as if something is seriously wrong or there's some serious buildup. But if there's any buildup on here, like I said, I cleaned it numerous times and I just think there's something wrong with it. Well, definitely something wrong with it when you can flip the wires around and it works fine on the preamp for the other side of the head. There's definitely something wrong with the head. So let me go ahead and we'll get this kind of straightened away, get the pressure roller put back on it, and get some line in and line out cables going to it, and we'll see what it sounds like. So give me a minute for that. All right, so we're making our way through our playback test tape. Actually, I got this tape from the same customer that brought this reel-to-reel in. He got these from somebody that made a bunch of recordings off of a radio station classics show that used to come on. This is dated 2012, so it was recorded back in 2012. So some of the music I'm good with, some leaves a little bit to be desired. I don't think I've ever made it all the way through this entire tape, but I think the takeaway from this is that we have both channels working absolutely identical now.
KC95, it's the A to Z list. We are amongst songs.
Yeah, I must have faded it out at that point. Let's see what else we got going on. Oh, here we go. Let's check a little of this out. A little grand bump. Well, if there was ever a song to be played on reel-to-reel, this is definitely one for sure. Both channels perfect. This is recorded in a long speed, and so it does drop a little bit of that high frequency definition on the long speed, but still sounds real good. So I think the next thing we'll do, let's dump it into the mixer so you're not listening to it through this microphone, and we can really get a good idea. And I think we'll load up a blank tape, and we'll monitor it as we're recording it, and we'll really get a good idea of what the playback and record quality of this is. But pretty happy with it. All right, so we're going to pick back up, doing our record quality test, and the tape I've decided on using is going to be not my newest tape. This is actually, I consider to be my best tape, and I cycled through a few tapes until I decided on that one. It seems to be the one that responds best to this particular tape deck, and you can drive yourself absolutely batshit crazy cycling through recording tapes trying to find one that matches the way the machine's EQ is. And unfortunately, there just isn't any, there's no fix because there's no new tapes. Well, there's no new, reasonably priced reel-to-reel tapes. If we had a time machine, obviously we could go back and just get a brand new spool of Maxell tape, and we wouldn't really have this problem with trying to find a tape that matches the machine. But that tape seems to respond best. It has the best sound from what I've found through the three choices I have for recording tapes. So the way we got this set up is I have the laptop dumped into the input of the reel-to-reel. We have it set on tape, so as soon as we hit play and record and start the source, we're listening to the actual tape, not the source. Got the output of the reel-to-reel going into the mixer, so it goes onto the video nice and clean, just like a line level source instead of you trying to hear it through the microphone. So let's go ahead and we'll start the machine up. And the song I picked for this, we're going to listen to some John Butcher Axis. Life Takes a Life. And as we can see, both channels absolutely identical. And since you can't differentiate between the right channel or the left channel and the right channel on the video, prior to the head being changed that we talked about during the playback test, is the right channel had a loss of gain and a loss of high frequency definition. There wasn't anything there hardly. And so now, even though you're hearing them basically summed together in a mono signal, this is perfect. These are absolutely perfect. One sounds just as good as the other one does. And this is what we were looking for. Anyone buying one of these machines that's going to pay the price that he's probably going to charge for this, you're going to want that machine to record top notch. It better perform. And so now it really would just come down to the end user what kind of quality tapes he has. If he has got a good quality tape, he's going to get a good quality recording. If he's got a shitty tape, he's going to get a shitty recording. Let's go ahead and listen to a little bit more. Well, now that we've got that all taken care of, I think the next thing we want to do is let's go ahead and pull off that top panel. And let's have a look down inside there and see if there's a way that we can get these reels adjusted out some. I noticed that as we got a little further into this reel, this one was scraping just a little bit on the inside of the tape right here. But that could possibly be my reel being a little bit warped, but I don't think so. I think these do need to be moved out just a little bit, each one of them. So let's take the top panel off and see if we can look down inside there and see if we can get easy access to make those adjustments. So give me a minute for that and we'll come back. Okay, let's pick back up and let's have a look at what the service manual tells us about how this reel should be sitting. And of course they made it easy. There's 2 adjustment screws holding it in place to the spindle. And if we read down here a little further, it's going to tell us exactly what to do. It says temporarily screw in the fixing screws, leaving a gap of 15 millimeters between the reel table and the chassis board. Run the tape and adjust the height of the reel table so that the tape is taken up in the center of the reel. Tighten the fixing screws. Adjust the height of the right reel and fast forward and the left and rewind. And I got the top off of the unit. And let's see if we can drop this on here and get this to show what I want it to show. Should be okay right there, maybe. Basically what I did was I cut us a 15 millimeter marker. And we can clearly see here, if I can do it without getting it in the way. There is not 15 millimeters there. I'm not sure why that would have came from the factory. It's just a tad bit off. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to take those 2 screws out. And we're going to pull that reel forward a little bit until this piece of paper will slip between the chassis and that reel hub. And it's easy to see when you look here. If you look here, you can tell that it's favoring towards the front. Now, granted that there is that reel pad there, but even if you take that reel pad away, that still won't put this tape right in the center of that reel. So, let's go ahead and unloosen one of these and see if we can move that just a tad bit. And they feel tight, like there's, you know, from the factory. It doesn't look like anybody's been in here messing with them. Okay. Now that I got them loose, I'm just going to take another small screwdriver and I'm going to kind of push it just a little bit, and you see it move just a little bit out of the way right there. Now you can see that piece of paper will stick in there now. And so I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to call that where it needs to be. I might just snug it up just a little bit. Let's go ahead and we'll tighten this one down. Pull the paper out. Not so sure how those would have gotten that far out of adjustment. You know, it's possible somebody did mess with it. I wouldn't think it would be that far out. Not from the factory anyway, but we're going to snug them down good. Let's recheck it with our piece of paper. Our piece of paper sticks in there without curling up, so we're going to call that good. And you can see that there's a fairly good gap there now between the reel motor and the hub where it starts right there. But 15 millimeters is what they say, and that's what we got. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to go ahead and adjust the other one, and then we're going to fast forward and rewind the tape, and we'll see if that tape winds up in the center where it should be. But I can tell already there's a difference. I mean, it looks pretty square right in the center of it now, but we're going to take those reel pads off. So let me go ahead and do the other side, and then we'll pick back up. All right, let's come back in. Went ahead and removed the two Pioneer adjustment sheets from the reels. And I fast forwarded and rewound the large spool of recording tape we were using, and I still wasn't exactly happy with where it was winding up. It wasn't perfectly right in the center of the reel during fast forward and rewind. And I noticed that both reels were doing the exact same thing. They were both kind of favoring towards the front a little bit. And so I decided to forego my presumably 15 millimeter card that I cut. And I went back in and adjusted them. And this time, I was doing it probably the better way. And that's just, you know, I'd make a slight adjustment, roll the tape, see where it wound up, and then once I got it exactly perfect the way I wanted it, I locked the screws down on both reels. And so I went back and forth between the supply reel and the take-up reel until I got it exactly perfect. And it is rolling beautifully. Also went ahead and threaded up our speed alignment tape. The speed is off just a little bit. We'll talk about that in a sec. Let's let this roll. And it is absolutely just perfect dead on. And it is dead on when it is fast forwarding and rewinding too. So let's do that. I mean, just as perfect as you can get it. So no matter how precise you try to be, sometimes the best method is to look at it and trial and error. Just adjust a little bit, lock it down, try it again until you get it exactly the way that you want it. As for the speed, we need 1,000 and we're at 982. So we are going to tweak that up. The manual lays that out for us real nicely too. It tells us here in the manual that if you want to adjust it, for the 1,000 hertz, you're going to use the VR number 2. And of course, for the slow speed, you're just going to half it. Use VR number 1 and get it to 500 hertz and you'll be good to go. So let's tweak that up a little bit. Give me a second. I'll throw the camera in the tripod for that. Okay, to take care of our speed adjustment, the fast speed, the pot for that is located on the far left edge of this circuit board, a little ways back. And the slow speed is located about around where the cap is, just a little ways back. And of course, if you're looking up underneath, you can easily see both of those. So let's go ahead and we'll do the fast speed first. Let's tweak that up. get a fix on our frequency counter here and see if we can dial it in a little bit. We're just going to ease it up until we get it where we want it to be. And I think we'll leave it right there. The book says plus or minus 5%. I think we're well within that range. All right, so let's switch it over to the slow speed. And then, of course, all we're looking for is just half of 1,500. And that one's running slow also, so let's tweak that out. And again, plus or minus 5%. We're definitely in that ballpark. If I wanted to be real particular about it, I can probably dial it right in there. These motors are extremely accurate. Let's see if I can get it right on it. Close enough. All right, I think our next step, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to clean I've got the back of this opened up for more than one reason. We're going to go ahead and clean the controls. There's some static in the output level control down in here, so we're going to get that cleaned up and get the input level controls cleaned and maybe get the switches, get those taken care of, and we'll be ready to do a final playback and record test on this. All right, so as we bring to a close our Akai GX625 reel-to-reel tape deck, as always, I want to thank you guys very much for checking out the video on this and checking out all the videos on the channel. Hopefully you found one of them to be helpful to you for something you might be working on. In this particular case, if you have this model and you need reel table adjustments, it's very easy to do it. Just remove the top cover and there's a small metal bracket running from left to right. Take a couple of screws out of that and it'll give you instantaneous access to the adjustment screws for the reel hubs. And if you have a suspected issue with the head, easy enough on this one. All you need to do, this method would apply to any reel-to-reel that you can access the wires for the head. Just flip the wires around on the head, and if that problem shifts over to the other side, then you know you've got a problem with the head, and it's not a problem with the circuitry. And that's a very good, quick troubleshooting method to eliminate any issue that you might think you may have a suspected head issue. So I guess the running theme we had going on with this video was guitar players. We had Pat Travers to start it out with, and then did some John Butcher. So I think the last song I want to play for you is one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs. In my opinion, David Gilmour is probably one of the most recognizable guitar players in history. He has a very unique sound, and that is no more apparent than it is on the song Run Like Hell. That riff is immediately recognizable to anyone that knows anything about rock music. So we'll go ahead and finish up and do a little bit of that. We're going to go ahead and kick our machine in to record. And we'll start it up. And again, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. Appreciate you watching the videos.